Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Yeah.
The views expressed by J. Michael McCoy are the views of the hosts and guests of Max World Live, and not necessarily the views of Webcast One Live, its staff, its management, the cleaning crew, Dave the electric guy, the guy who cleans the skywalk, the woman who brought in the cookies, the management staff of Hubble Real Estate, the parking lot attendant at Keck Parking, the wait staff over at Miss Kitty's, the coffee crew at Frederick's, the man in the street corner willing to work for food, Rob Spearman, Max Crabb, or anyone else of sound mind. Should you be offended, provoked, intimidated, shocked, confused, or just made to think independently, log on to maxworldlive.com right now. It's your voice we want to hear in Max World. And now, live from the palatial studios of Webcast One Live, your host, J. Michael McCoy.
And as you can see, if you're looking at your picture right now, this is not J. Michael McCoy. I don't know where I fit into that litany of interesting individuals that they gave on the promo, but this is Tom Coates, Director and President of Consumer Credit of Des Moines. And normally Mac lists me as a guest host, but I'm just a guy that stumbles in, sits in a chair, and has commentary on a Tuesday. But today, Mac's gone. He's gone to a funeral and asked that I do the host duties, so I'm doing the best I can to sit in here and fill these large shoes in this big chair behind this microphone. I'll do the best I can. And today we have a guest that I've known now for a few years, Charles Schneider. He's a not that recently, he's been in there for a little bit, but he's a state senator. Some of you may not be familiar with Charles. He has been our guest on this show in prior times, but we're having him back on to kind of give us a wrap-up of what went on with the state Senate this year. Some people say not much got done. Other people say they got some significant accomplishments done. Other people say if they didn't get much done, that's just as well. But we're going to ask Charles, and first off, Charles, I want you to introduce yourself to the audience. Give us a little bit about your background, what you do now, because the Senate is a part-time position, your family. Give us a little bit about who you are so that they'll get to know you if they haven't seen you already.
Sure. And first of all, thanks for inviting me back here, Tom, you and Mac both. Sorry he's not here with us today. I hope he's doing okay. Anyway, about myself, I'm an Iowa native, born and raised in the state. I was actually born in Davenport. My family lived in Muscatine. And I've also lived in Richmond, Virginia for about 6 years, lived in Clive from 5th grade until after my sophomore year of high school.
Let me stop you here before I forget,
Sure.
because my memory is short anymore. Bob Miller in the insurance industry over in Muscatine. Did you know Bob?
I did not, no.
Oh, okay.
My dad worked for Hahn Industries.
Yes.
The
yes.
office manufacturer there.
Bob Miller, I think he's retired. And they had a pretty large insurance industry over there, and Bob and I worked closely in the early days back in the 90s trying to offset the casinos as they came in. And I remember Bob came over and we did some tours, met some people, met with the Methodist bishop one time. Bob and I came in. That guy was a waste of time. I walked out of there and Bob did too. An hour of our lives we'll never get back. Anyway, go ahead. Don't let me interrupt you. Continue with your story.
Yeah, after my sophomore year of high school, my family moved to Newton, and my parents still live there. Went to college at Creighton University, which is where I met my wife, Lisa. Then went to work for my fraternity as a regional director in Richmond, Virginia. Then moved to Washington, D.C., and worked at the World Bank for a year while I studied to take the LSAT.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
and then
okay.
Then came back to Des Moines while I was waiting to go to law school and volunteered for David Oman's campaign when he ran for governor in '98. That's how you and I first met.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember
our
history going back that far or not.
Well,
but.
like I say, my memory's short and incomplete at this point. But yeah, okay.
And then I worked for Senator Grassley in his '98 reelection campaign for a couple of months, and then went off to law school in Iowa. Graduated with a joint JD MBA degree.
What year?
2002.
Okay.
And then moved to Central Iowa, moved to West Des Moines, and worked at the Dickinson Law Firm just next door in Hub Tower for about 5 years. Then Principal hired me, and I've been with them full-time ever since.
Good. Good. Well, yeah, I had reason this last year to use the Dickinson Law Firm. I hope not to have to repeat that. We ended up on top, but those things are never fun.
Yeah, no.
The experience that you gained. Now, you were elected to the Iowa Senate again in what year?
In 2012.
2012. So this is just your second full year in there. You're still not officially a rookie, but you're still pretty new at it.
Yes.
But you've had a little bit of experience. Give us, at the outset, we're going to get into some of the details, but did you consider this to be a productive year? Were you satisfied on balance with how things went this year?
Well, it seemed to be a relatively quiet year. At least it started out that way. One of the critical things that we were able to pass is the Governor's Home Base Iowa initiative, which I think will be good for not only veterans who are retiring from the military and looking for full-time work, but also for employers around the state who are trying to find people to fill some critical skills needs that they have. We have a shortage of skilled workers in this state. So anything we can do to help us attract people with skills that are needed by Iowa employers here will help. Aside from that, really, it was just seemed to be a hodgepodge of things that were passed. There was one issue in particular. Well, there have been I guess there were a few issues that popped up that were on nobody's radar screen at the beginning of the session. The cannabis oil bill is one of those.
All right. Okay. I'll tell you what. Let's go down them item by item, and
Okay.
Before we get started into the items like that, let me ask you, because there seemed to be at least an attempt at a media frenzy in regards to the Branstad issues, in regards to the secret covered up agreements to terminate some of these people. It was viewed, at least by the Register, as a political coup. He wanted to remove his enemies. They covered it up. They paid him off. Then we find out later that predecessors like Vilsack and Culver had done similarly. Tell us, what in your mind is this other than perhaps just a political witch hunt engineered by the Democrats and their willing allies in the media?
I don't know that it's anything beyond that, to be frank. We, Senate Republicans and House Republicans offered, well, the House passed a bill that would have required reasons for a person's termination to be disclosed and made public information.
And Branstad did executive action on that, didn't
Exactly. Yep, he did. And we supported that. Senate Republicans supported that as well. The Democrats didn't want to take it that far.
Okay, and let's talk about reasons why they didn't. Was it some people suggested that they were doing the bidding of their union masters who did not want to see it go that far. They liked to make some political media hay with it, but they didn't want to go as far as it should have gone. Is that your view?
Well, I don't want to necessarily infer intentions on them, but I will tell you that we did get, all of us in the Senate did get a letter from one of the union heads. I can't remember which one. It wasn't Danny Holman.
It wasn't Danny Holman.
It was another one.
Jabba the Hutt. It was one of his minions.
And they talked about how bad it would be for Iowa's workforce if we went ahead and opened the doors, let sunshine in on reasons for people being dismissed. And soon after we received that letter, Democrats made it pretty clear that they weren't going to do anything on that.
Okay.
So people can draw their own conclusions from that, I think.
Well, some of my rhetoric may be a little bit contentious, but I've seen Danny Holman in action over the years, and I can't help but make the analogy of the Star Wars Jabba the Hutt, where the minions were around feeding him the small reptiles to keep him pacified. But anyway, I think that's an appropriate one. The Democrats aren't going to let this go. Jack Hatch is at least going to do what he can. He's raised almost no money compared to Branstad. That was reported in the paper, I think, just today. They're going to do what they can to try to keep what little scandal they can. I think it's not to defeat Branstad. I think it's to try to circumvent some of his coattail effects myself. But they're going to continue with hearings over the summer. They're going to come in, they're going to sit around for a dog and pony show and ostensibly do hearings. Do you have any thoughts on that? Will Republicans be participating in that activity at all?
Well, those Republican members who serve on the Government Oversight Committee will be participating. I don't know if the House Republicans will be participating in that. I believe I'm going to be appointed to the Government Oversight Committee to replace State Senator Sandy Greiner, who's retiring at the end of this year, and I think just was ready to move on to the next stage of her life. Plus, I'm closer to Des Moines, where the hearings are going to be held, so they're probably a combination of factors.
So
there.
You'll be in some of those hearings?
I will be, yeah.
Oh, goody.
Yeah, can't
now,
wait.
I assume that the hearings will continue to transpire until the election, and then I assume it'll all go away.
That's what I assume, too.
Okay. All right.
And I think your conclusion is an accurate one, that what they might be trying to do is erode some of the coattail effect that Branstad might have. A lot of the Senate Democrats didn't endorse Senator Hatch for governor. They endorsed the other person who was in the race at the time. So I'm not even sure that all of his caucus wants to see him be governor.
Well, again, unless something happens physically to Branstad, unless he has some kind of a heart attack, God forbid, between now and the election, I don't see Hatch, because he's not well known outside the metro area. He's not even universally liked and acclaimed within the metro area. He's been able at this point to raise very little money. You've got despite some of the register's best efforts, you've got a very popular, longtime Governor Branstad. Do you see any path for the Democrats to really hope to win the Terrace Hill this time around?
I don't.
Okay. Let me, while we're on this, and we've got a few minutes before the first break, I have in my own mind, I've conjured a scenario that I think maybe plays out. And I'll bounce this off you, and you may not even want to have any comment on it. But what I see happening is Branstad wins reasonably easily. Gets appointed into his second term here, which of course goes on the back of all of the terms that he served prior to that. Then maybe a year or so, maybe two, before his next term is out, he steps down while he's still in office, and he turns the reins over to his Lieutenant Governor, Kim Reynolds. Then she becomes the governor, and brings the mantle of an incumbent into the race, and then whoever steps up, and presumably some of the A-list players didn't want to come up this time. And I'm reminded of, you never know what's going to happen, because I remember when Herbert Walker Bush went into his second term, he was so popular on the back of the Operation Desert Storm, the A-list players on the Democrat side didn't want to give. That's how Bill Clinton, a little-known Arkansas governor, got to step in, and as luck would have it, Bush's popularity waned, and plus we got Ross Perot to come in and take 19% of the vote, and he steps in as the president. So anything is possible, but I've always anticipated maybe Vilsack coming back into the picture, and coming back in, and he would want the thing, and he wouldn't want to run up against Branstad, so he wouldn't do it now. But anticipating in 4 years, and Branstad would at least give Kim Reynolds a running start as the incumbent to come into the election with that cloak of incumbency to run against a tougher opponent than Hatch when they think they might really have a shot at winning it. What's your thought on that, if you want to express any?
Sure. Yeah, I've thought about that too. Different people have speculated about that, and I can see where they're coming from. Personally, I don't see that as a likely scenario for a couple of reasons. First, I think Governor Branstad really enjoys being governor, and I think he's running for re-election with the full intent of serving out the next 4 years and then making a decision about his future after that. I don't think he's the type of person who wants to get elected to a 4-year term only to turn around a year or two later and step aside. Mm-hmm. The second reason is I don't think that's something that Lieutenant Governor Reynolds would really want. No? To me, if I were she, at least, I would want to win an election on my own right. I wouldn't want to be governor solely because the person who had preceded me stepped aside and I filled in to serve out the remainder of their term. So those are the two main reasons why I just don't think that's a very likely scenario.
Good. All right. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate your thoughts on that, and you're certainly more astute and closer to the issue than I. We're going to take our first break, ladies and gentlemen, and this has been Max World Live, powered by Webcast One Live, 99.3 KTIA.
Across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device, your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom! Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hey, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. I want to tell you about our brand new time slot. It's from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's on the same night, Tuesdays. We now follow Ed Fallon and the Fallon Forum on webcast1live.com. I want to tell you a little bit about our show. Our show is focused on local, state, and national, and sometimes international politics. We like to keep people updated and informed. We also have very interesting guests. So please join us every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on webcast1live.com.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. You know, there's an app for that.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Max World Live, powered by Webcast One Live, 99.3 KTIA. J. Michael McCoy is not in the house today. This is your poor substitute, Tom Coates, taking over the reins as best I can, given my limited capacity and abilities for the great one. Today we are visiting with a friend of mine, a fellow named Charles Schneider. Charles mentioned in his earlier segment that he's an attorney and has now been working for Principal as in-house counsel for about 5 years. He's also into his second year now, second session as a Iowa senator. What's the senatorial number of your district?
22.
22.
It includes West Des Moines, Clive, Waukee, and Windsor Heights.
Okay. All right. Good. And I tell you what, honestly, I've been very impressed with Charles' intelligence, his candor. He's come to me and at one point confessed that he hadn't thought through a particular issue, had come around on it after listening to an interview I'd done on it. I don't remember the details of it, but that is something that is rare in politics, and at least in my experience. Somebody that will come up, admit that they perhaps hadn't studied something as well as they might have, and it turned around and changed their mind. So I greatly respect somebody that is willing to do that. Now, Charles, we left off last doing some speculation on my part and your thoughts on some political what ifs. Now let's play a what if game here. What if we're coming into an election year? I want to visit with you a little bit about the primaries in a minute. But what if the Republicans are successful in this state, in large part because of the unpopularity in general of Obama, the Obamacare, the fact that in most off-year elections, which we're coming into here in 14, Democrats typically don't turn out very well for off-year elections. Republicans seem to do well, as they did back in 10 in the off-year elections. And so with the wind at our back, nothing significant to trip us up, there is a chance that we could reclaim the Iowa Senate to go along with the House. Then with a Republican governor of the House and the Senate, the possibility would then exist that we won't have the obstructionist Gronstal in there to block any significant legislation that we want to get done, and we could actually make some positive changes for the state of Iowa. First, what's your prognostication on the possibility that the Republicans will be able to reclaim the Senate this year?
I think we've got a good shot at it. We have 2 seats that will be difficult for us to defend, but I think we can manage that, at least in one of them, and hopefully in both of them. I know both candidates in those seats are working hard right now and will continue to work hard throughout the remainder of the campaign season to win re-election.
Do you want to mention names?
No, everyone
Okay, right.
now they know
Okay.
who they are,
All right.
but and they may not mean much to just the casual listener. There are a couple seats that I would call toss-ups, and then there are a couple seats that Democrats currently have that I think we have a real opportunity to take.
How many do we need to take? Is it 2?
Two to gain majority.
That's all we need.
One would get us an even split, but to really get things done, we need a majority.
A lot of us were disappointed in the last election that there more wasn't pushed in that presidential year. That felt like Romney and perhaps some of his forces could have pushed better down line on some of these Senate races and perhaps helped us to claim, because there were some seats and some races that were winnable and that we didn't win, and they were by some cases close margins. So let's say that this year is a different year. We get those 2 seats. We become the majority party. What is your party's priority objectives, knowing that we may have a short window to make some significant changes? What's your top priority, Charles?
I think it's fair for me to say that the top priority of the Senate Republican caucus would be to reform our income tax structure right now. We have the 4th highest top marginal income tax rate in the country. Now, of course, that's not taking into account the fact that we have federal deductibility, so our top nominal rate is not necessarily the effective rate. Nevertheless, when you look at any publication of tax rates, you see Iowa show up as having the 4th highest top marginal rate. That makes us uncompetitive. The states that are doing best right now have minimal to no income tax or a flat income tax at a low rate. We need to be more competitive, and one of the areas we need to look is at the income tax. So that's going to be one of the first priorities.
First priority. I think it's always been a tough sell, and you put your finger on it, the deductibility issue. We've got to explain that right out of the chute, and for some people, you've already lost them before you ever get there. You'd eliminate federal deductibility, you'd go with a very low, perhaps a flat rate, something along that line that would put us in a very competitive position, because we are competing. Just as America competes against other countries in the world on a number of levels, we are competing against other states right now, and we need to put ourselves in as competitive a position as we can to get the jobs and the businesses that are out there. Am I right?
You're absolutely right, and I would say we're even competing internationally. We're not just competing with other states. We're competing internationally for business.
Good point. Good point. Would you do anything with the corporate taxes?
Yeah, I think we need to lower those too. We have the highest corporate tax rate. It's not a system, you can't easily equate it with a personal income tax rate, because there are different things like factoring that are taken into account to determine what actually is taxed. But I think we would need to take a look at that as well and make sure that we're competitive in that area too.
Well, and again, this America has if not one of the highest corporate tax rates in the world.
Yeah.
And we have seen billions of our corporate dollars go offshore and overseas seeking more friendly tax havens. It makes sense to me to, in essence, eliminate corporate taxes. Ireland has become quite a haven. I mean, they dropped theirs to almost nothing and attracted businesses from all over the world.
And the other thing, sorry.
I'm sorry. No, but I'm agreeing with you that this country and this state need to be more competitive in whatever environment they find themselves in. It makes no sense. And this argument that you're only going to be benefiting the rich, well, poor men don't create businesses and don't start jobs and create environments where people can lift themselves up with good jobs and good opportunities. That's why this argument about raising the minimum wage to $12 or $15 an hour or something makes so little sense, especially amongst the workers that in many cases will be losing their jobs if those minimum wages were actually raised to anything close to those levels. Come back to your point.
Yeah, I was also going to mention that a lot of businesses also pay tax at the individual rate. Businesses don't only pay tax at the corporate rate, because a lot of businesses, as you know, are limited liability corporations or sub-S chapter corps, where the income flows through the corporation to the individual.
Exactly right, and you make an excellent point, and I don't think the average person quite understands that. They're thinking that we're just taxing the fat cats, and it's for one thing, the fat cats don't even come around when you've got a tax like that. Secondly, many of them are taxed at the individual rate, and they'll take their wares elsewhere too. They'll go down to a place, I lived in 81 to 87 down in the state of Texas, and Texas has no state income tax.
Yeah.
And what a nice thing that was down there. And when I moved back, what an unpleasant surprise, even at a low level of earnings, to see see state taxes start getting deducted again. So Florida, Texas, some of these other places, we've got to think about trying to compete with them. And I'm just hopeful and in some degree readiment now for Republicans for at least a short period of time to take it over, to make us competitive, put us in a position where even the Democrats will eventually have to say, oh, that wasn't so bad. Oh, well, we're not having to pay so much. We got more businesses now, more jobs. Great. What would be your second priority after a tax change?
Well, for me personally, I think we need to address our pension systems. We have 4 public pensions in the state of Iowa, and they are all they're all underfunded by varying degrees. One of the issues that worries me is the whole transparency issue involved in making sure that the public and the employees understand the different assumptions, actuarial assumptions that are being made to determine what the funding liability is. There are 2 key metrics that I think we really need to look at. One of them is the mortality tables that we're using, or life expectancy. I think that we're probably using, I know in the case of one pension system, because 2 of the directors on the pension system have told me that we're using outdated mortality tables.
Oh boy.
That means that we are underestimating how long people are going to live. So in turn, we're underestimating how much money we need to set aside to pay for their pension benefits. That means that the funding level that we say we're funding the pension system at, say it's 84%, is really too high. Maybe it's really closer to 80 or 75%.
Yeah. So it's inadequate. Scott Walker in Wisconsin has done a remarkable job of opening up some of those negotiations in regards to things like you're talking about. I think we could take a page out of his book, don't you think?
I do, absolutely. And the second actuarial assumption that we really need to look at is the discount rate. The discount rate is basically it tells you how much money you need to set aside in today's dollars to meet your obligations 20, 50 years down the road. And under the government accounting standards, the discount rate is higher than what it probably is in reality. So I think we're also underfunding our liabilities by using too high of a discount rate. And that's really not fair to taxpayers, because we're not fully disclosing the liability, the pension liability, to the people who are responsible for paying it. And it's also unfair to the workers who are relying on that benefit when they retire. Well,
okay. again, I think what you're talking about is doing a mirror off of what Scott Walker has done remarkably so. I mean, and he has been under severe attack by the public employees unions to the point of being recalled and surviving and actually went in with a larger margin. He's brought them to a point that they are very competitive. They were, they were probably about as bad off as our neighboring state of Illinois because of the kind of contract negotiations that had been done so one-sidedly with the Democrats and the unions for years. The collective bargaining over there in regards to their salaries, their benefits, and especially the area of the retirement programs. And that's what's killed some of these corporations, too. I mean, General Motors and some of the others have entered into these unsustainable retirement contracts where these people work for 20, 25 years, retire with a six-figure salary, and live another 20 years to boot. Not sustainable, especially in the public sector. So you would be for some fundamental readdressment on the public employee side, which, of course, be done over the dead bodies of the Democrats, but that would be the time to do it. House, Senate, Governor, no better time than that, no other time than that.
Well, I hope the Democrats would work with us on that. if they really care about the well-being of the retirees, the union retirees, then they're going to want to make sure that the numbers we're showing the public and the retirees reflect reality. And I would hope that that's where their real interest lies. They'd be willing to come to the table. And if after looking at those numbers, we see that we are, in fact, a lot less well-funded than what we think we are, then I would hope they'd be willing to sit down and talk about making some changes.
Well, I'm not normally a betting man, as you probably know, Charles, but I would be willing to wager that was not going to be the scenario that you will encounter.
I am probably to a fault an optimist.
Well, we're coming into the next break, and on that comical note of Charles' exuberant optimism, we will cut away for our next break. And this is Tom Coates coming to you from Max World Live, powered by Webcast One, 99.3 KTIA.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave. and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
And we're back. Mac's World Live. Not with Mac today. Tom Coates coming to you. Powered Mac's World Live, powered by Webcast 199.3 KTIA. And today we're coming to you with a good fella. Been in the Iowa Senate for 2 years now, and had just been through his second session. Charles Schneider. And Charles is talking about some of the issues of the day, what got done and perhaps what didn't get done. Charles, the next issue I want to touch on you about is this cannabis oil bill.
Mm-hmm.
Some controversy there. Tell us your thoughts. You were a supporter. Tell us why, and give us some details on that.
Sure. This is one of those issues that really was on nobody's radar screen at the beginning of the session and was really just kind of laughed off as an impossibility. The way it came to my attention is the mayor of West Des Moines, Steve Gare, and his wife Sally have a daughter who has a rare form of epilepsy called Dravet syndrome. I served with Steve on the West Des Moines City Council for 5 years, know him and Sally well. And Steve sent me an email with some information about cannabis oil and how it has been used to treat people, especially children, who have intractable epilepsy. In other words, they've got epilepsy so bad that they really can't function without any kind of assistance.
Right.
So I listened to their story. I listened to the stories of other people who showed up at different legislative forums that I had, and I learned more about what this cannabis oil was. So when I first thought about cannabis oil or medical marijuana, my instinct was to think that this was just a sham for people to get access to use marijuana and smoke it for recreational use.
A la Oregon, Colorado, the sham that's been perpetrated on the California people with medical marijuana.
Yeah.
I got you.
And as I looked into this more, what I learned is that this cannabis oil has very little THC in it. THC is the compound that gets people the high that they're looking for. It doesn't have enough in there to give people that reaction. And this particular oil is only taken orally. It can't be smoked. Mm-hmm. Because it can't be smoked and it doesn't produce a high, it would have no street value if it was sold illegally here. And there would be no incentive for people who didn't have epilepsy to try and get this because it wouldn't get them what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. So the more I thought through those issues, the more I just became convinced that this is something we needed to do for people like the Gares who have tried every single FDA-approved drug there is, have had to put their children on other medications to combat the side effects of the FDA-approved anti-epileptic medications, and who really have no other hope.
Well, I think you've done a good thing, and I salute you and the others that support it. I'm reasonably confident Branstad will sign it in short order. You've done two things. You've offered some opportunity to those people that you're talking about. I don't know what percentage. It doesn't matter if it's only 2 people in the state. At least we've done something for them. And 2, you took the medical argument off the table for the people that are wanting to mainstream dope smoking in our society. And just recently, after a long study, I don't remember where it was Harvard or who it was, came out with a study showing that the brains of the dope smokers are actually physically altered. It alters the shape of the brain. It dumbs them down. The idea of the empty pothead is factual, and they can document it now, which is odd because at the very time that much of the country is running headlong into mainstreaming marijuana smoking, we've got the evidence after years of study that it fundamentally alters the brain. Do we really want to dumb down the population? They say, well, it's no worse than alcohol. Well, maybe in some ways it is, in some ways it isn't. But I mean, alcohol's enough of a bane in our society. Why should we want to invite more in?
Yeah, that's
so
a
I
poor
applaud
argument,
you on
I think,
both.
yeah.
You've taken the medical argument off the table, and you have put a position in now. It's going to be much more difficult for them to come in. They will do it. Mm-hmm. But it'd be much more difficult for them to come in and argue for the mainstreaming of marijuana smoking. So I applaud you for that effort, and I very much concurred with it once I understood what you said, what was going on.
Thank you.
The talk about the veterans situation. You raised some veterans issues on some of your points you wanted to cover today. Mm-hmm. Talk about some of those.
The issues that I'm most familiar with involve the Home Base Iowa initiative that we launched here in Iowa. I'm not as familiar with the issues with the federal VA system and what's going on with that right now. I just haven't had time to look into it closely, although it's a shame that it's a disgrace that we're going through that right now, and that our veterans, in some cases, have lost their lives because of the games that have been played.
If we believe the figures, 40 veterans have lost their lives through the incompetence. Maybe intent. Some people claim intent, others just claim incompetence. But I think if nothing else, it is a preview of one-payer health care. The government in charge of our health care. Sarah Palin was laughed at when she described the visage of the vision of death panels out here, and yet now we have a close-up and personal view of what death panels look like. Yeah. It's inattention. It's doing what they do over in Great Britain. They push them down. They delay it. If you can survive long enough, we'll give you some treatment, but many of them don't survive. And that, unfortunately, I think is the specter of a government-run, no alternative health care. A much better alternative on that one, I think, is McCain's suggestion that they give them a card. And the card gives them medical benefits at any facility that they want to go to. You're not backed up on that with a lot of stuff, and I'm no expert either, but that's what it looks like to me. What are we looking to do in Iowa for our veterans?
Well, in Iowa, we're looking to do several things. First, we're going to exempt military retirement pay from state income tax. We hope that will make Iowa a more attractive place for veterans who are still work eligible to move to and relocate to once they retire from military service. And there will be there'll be thousands of veterans retiring from military service soon.
Absolutely.
In a short period of time.
Continue to cut down the numbers in the military. There are going to be more veterans out there looking for other work, isn't there?
Yep. And once we get them to commit to coming to Iowa, or a part of the process of getting them to commit to coming to Iowa is making sure that we can find them work here.
Excellent.
We know there are employers around the state who are trying to find skilled workers and just can't find them. Well, a lot of these military retirees will have the skills that our employers are looking for. So what this bill also does is make it easier for employers to get occupational licensing, use their military experience to get whatever occupational licensing they want. It makes it easier for them to qualify for academic credit going into higher education as well, so they can further complete their degrees, whether it's an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree or whatever.
All right, good. All right, let's take what time we have before the break to go into one other area, and that's one that I think gets a lot of people fired up. The sex predator, the kidnapping of the two girls recently, the Klunder case that raised its head. The fellow was locked up for a violent sexual assault, was allowed to walk free. What are we going to do to try to make sure that people that are really, in most cases, not able to be rehabilitated and move back into the mainstream society do not find their way out, I guess, unless they're an illegal immigrant, and then there's 36,000 of those that were released onto us this last year by the feds, and many of those were sexual predators. But aside from the out of being a legal immigrant, what are we going to do in the state of Iowa to try to keep these people locked up?
Well, that's really a battle that took place between the House and Senate toward the end of the session. There's a bill that both chambers passed that would have changed our kidnapping laws. The House added an amendment that would have done away with earned time or time off for good behavior. The Senate Democrats didn't like that amendment. We support what the House Republicans want to do with that, to do away with earned time, and would have supported that if it came through the Senate and voted for it. The reason I support it, and I think I can say all of my colleagues in the Senate Republican caucus support it as well, is for one of the very reasons you just stated, which is that these people are not going to be rehabilitated. They're not going to be productive members of society. They're people who are going to have to be under constant supervision for the rest of their lives.
Charles, I may want to come back with one follow-up question to this after the break when we move on to another subject, but I appreciate your thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tom Coates coming to you from Max World Live, powered by Webcast One, 99.3 KTIA.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places, especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart, and it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life, change your relationships, transform your world.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming back to you. This is Tom Coates subbing in for J. Michael McCoy on Max World Live. And our guest today is State Senator Charles Schneider, serving his second year in office, doing an admirable job in my judgment anyway. One quick follow-up question. We were talking about the sexual predator bill. The fact that you and your Republican colleagues want to try to make it so that these guys are not leased back into our state and our society while they're still a danger to others. Why would the Democrats oppose you on this?
Well, I think, and I'm not sure all Democrats do, but the argument for keeping earned time generally is that it incents inmates to behave well because it reduces their sentences. And that's something that some people in law enforcement advocate for, and that's the justification they give. The difference between sexually violent predators and the general inmate population is that with sexually violent predators, there's something wrong there with the person that just cannot be rehabilitated. At least we haven't found a way to do that. So in my opinion, it doesn't make any sense to let them earn time off or reduce their sentences for good behavior, because these are people who it's best for society to leave behind bars.
Okay. All right. But the majority in the Democrats in the Iowa Senate did not see fit to move in on that, which might be another issue you could deal with if you got the Democrats into a minority status.
Right.
Almost every day, Charles, front page news. I noticed in the Register almost every day they have some new letter to the editor talking about man-made global warming. Now, of course, they're smart enough. When I was a young man, they were talking about the next ice age. And then a few years, some of these same charlatans come back in and claim we're going into global warming. Now, since they've been claiming for years we were going to have a terrific hurricane season in the Gulf, and after a couple of the calmest years of hurricanes that we've seen in my lifetime, they now go to a climate change and disruption. That means whether it's too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry, too windy, too anything, they can blame it on man-made global warming, which the writer of the letter today, the latest bonehead that wrote in, talked about the need to go to a carbon tax. Now, if this guy were smart enough to and cared enough to go into it, he would observe that only 16% of the carbon output in this world, because they all say it's a worldwide problem, 16% of the carbon output comes from this country, and that's a shrinking number every day. We continue to do things to clean up our energy. We've gone to clean coal. They want to eliminate coal companies. And by the way, from a practical standpoint, the electricity generation in this country needs coal and it needs nuclear, and we can't leave that anytime soon. Yet they're going to bankrupt some more coal companies very quickly, and if not by legislation, by executive action. And to put a tax on us so that we pay not $3.50 but $7 or $8 a gallon for our gasoline, put the coal companies out of business, cause our electricity costs to double, is not going to do one iota, even if you believe that man is the cause of climate disruption, which I contend is only in the computer models that they've phonied up over the last few decades anyway. Your thoughts on my political tirade here?
Well, I'd agree with you. I don't know how you can take. I mean, we've only been recording weather for 100, 150 years, something like that, maybe 200. I don't know, but I don't know how we can extrapolate that small amount of information when the Earth has been around in existence for thousands of years and claim it as fact. It's a theory. And I can understand the science behind it. I can understand maybe humans are contributing to it, but even if they are, it's hard to tell how much they're contributing. So I don't see any real rational reason for moving forward with adding taxes like that.
A cynic like myself would conclude that the reason and rationale is to continue to promote the power and the intrusiveness and the expense and the all-encompassing nature of our federal government. I can't reach a whole lot of... Ed Fallon's got his show on here, and I get emails from Ed, and he's out tromping the country, tromping out there for, the great March for Climate Change. There's a lot of well-meaning people, and I think they're being taken in by the few charlatans in this country and in this world that want to do that for their own ends. But I'm going to let's move in our final few minutes to the two races right now. Handicap, if you would, for me, the Republican race for the U.S. Senate. We've had Mark Jacobs, we've had Matt Whitaker, we've had Sam Clovis on. We can't seem to get Joni Ernst on here, although she's promised me a couple times she'll come on. How do you see that race shaping up?
Well, it looks like it's shaping up to be a battle between Jacobs and Ernst. But they're really attacking each other right now on different issues, and I think that leaves an opening for either Whitaker or Sam Clovis to come in and capture some of the people who might be dissuaded by the attacks that the two, or maybe I should say distinctions that the two are pointing out about each other's words and actions.
The attacks seem to be sharpest coming from Jacobs, who's obviously had the biggest war chest. He's taken his gun totally off of Bruce Braley and put him squarely on Joni Ernst with very nasty ads, some of us would consider on both radio and TV. Is this the act of a desperate man who sees his poll numbers slipping and a couple $1 million in media buys going out the window?
I don't think so. I mean, in all fairness, Jacobs himself was attacked by outside money
but not by
groups.
Joni.
No, not by Joni. I don't know what. Well, not by her directly. I don't know who these outside groups are affiliated with. I haven't looked at their board of directors to see if there are any Iowans on there who are on anyone's campaign in particular. But it's an unfortunate part of politics.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. We're wrapping up real quick. Tell me what you think of the House race. Who's in the lead? Who's going to win that one? Brad Zahn, Matt Schultz. Tell me who you think over there.
I think we're going to be headed to a convention, and if it goes, and if it goes to a convention, then it's anybody's game. I have no idea.
Who do you think has the inside track on a convention in that?
Well, I think that almost all the candidates have been working the phones hard to talk to delegates who are going to be going to the district convention. I know, or I've heard from other people who've told me they've gotten calls from Monty Shaw and David Young personally. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I imagine some of the other candidates are doing that as well. Robert Kramer, I think I've heard someone say that they got a phone call from him directly.
It's a crowded field. I appreciate your time. I wish we had just a little bit more. I'd like to follow up on these races just a little bit more with some thoughts I've got, but appreciate your time in here, Charles, and we'll have to have you back. Enjoy the conversations that we have, and we'll get Mac involved next time you're in.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure, and these are big shoes to fill, ladies and gentlemen. Sitting in here for the legendary, although legendary is an interesting word. I did an interview one time with Jim Zabel, who said people call you legendary when you've been at the career so long, you're no longer a threat to your peers. So I don't know if I'll use that term, but the long-serving J. Michael McCoy, it's a pleasure to sit in for him. This has been Tom Coates sitting in at Max World Live, powered by Webcast One Live, heard on 99.3 KTIA.